I haven't had anything really creepy happen to me in a couple months. I mean, I've heard and seen some things at the house, but nothing like out of the ordinary that I'm not used to. But yesterday, when I was getting ready for work, I noticed that I had some scratches on my legs. Well, on my legs, sorry. So yesterday, when I got to work, I showed my coworker, right? And I'm telling her, like, hey, I got these random scratches. I guess they happened overnight. Like, I have no idea where I got them from. And they weren't red. They were like purplish, like they were bruised already. And I tried like scrubbing at it, thinking maybe it's dirt. Like, maybe I like run my leg on something. I don't know. Each scratch was like spaced apart by like 3 fingers. So there was like a scratch, there was a gap, and then another scratch and a gap, another scratch, and there was 4 scratches like across my leg, kind of like if somebody was behind me and had like scratched my leg. So then the afternoon comes, right? And I have 2 different aides in the afternoon. So we're sitting outside, like, hey, I got these random scratches. Like, what do you think they could be? Because they know that, I deal with paranormal stuff. And when I lift my pant, there's nothing, like, there's not a single scratch. And I'm like in shock because the morning aide, like, she saw it. Like, I scrubbed at it, like, this was not coming off. As soon as I'm doing that, I hear 2 different ladies talking and right behind me. And the way that we were, I was sitting down finishing some paperwork, and one of the aides was like on the left of me and the other one was like on the right. We were forming like a triangle. I heard somebody on the left side of me, like behind me, and I looked back so fast because I thought somebody was coming. And so I look at my coworkers, I'm like, did you guys hear that? And they're like, no, we didn't hear nothing. I'm like, did the walkie-talkies go off? Like, what was that? They said they didn't hear anything, right? My coworker on the left side of me is like, is that why you like jumped? And I'm like, yeah, because I thought somebody was coming. And my other coworker that's sitting on the right side, she's very quiet. So I'm like, did you hear it? Like, or am I just tripping? And she said, I didn't hear it. But as soon as you bolted like that, she said, I saw somebody run behind me. That's why I turned back to look. So at the same time that I heard the voices, she saw somebody run behind her. And the fact that the scratches were like no longer on my leg, that shit has been spooking me since yesterday. And this morning when I got to work, I showed my morning aide, like, dude, remember the scratches on my leg? And she's like, where are they at? I'm like, they're gone. Like, there's no traces of anything, no scar, nothing. And low key, I'm not gonna lie, I have been a little tripped out because I've seen and heard things, yeah, but I haven't had something like physically leave a mark on me before. I felt somebody like touch my hair, touch my shoulder and stuff, but not ever leave a mark on me like that.
You know that feeling that you get when you feel like somebody's following you? Kind of like a weird dark energy in the air, and you just kind of feel like someone is staring into the back of your soul. Then every time you turn around, there's literally nothing there, or it just might be hiding. Because I'm going to tell you what the heck just happened to me and my dog Dakota here as we were just walking here through the woods. Though on a quick side note, my makeup is on point today. So Dakota and I are here, we're walking through the woods and we're walking down the trail, and he literally starts to growl a little bit out as he's staring out into the woods. I'm thinking like, okay, it's an animal, because just like any other dog, you know, they see an animal, they start to get ready to pounce. And yes, I've live streamed around here a lot, so it's pretty typical and normal for me to feel like somebody is out in these woods watching me. But I knew this started to get serious once I heard the footsteps behind me. Just to give you some perspective, this is the trail that we were just walking down. As we're walking down the trail, I literally thought that I heard like maybe an animal out in the woods, like thinking it was a deer, until I heard something whisper and it just went, hey. And that was when Dakota just stopped and stared into the woods and started growling and sticking his fur up. And I just said, come on, boy, let's go. And we started walking, and that was when I heard a sound like, I literally heard it like it was walking behind me, and then it quickly ran up, and it sounded like it was right behind me. And that was when I turned around and I realized there was literally nothing there. I will tell you, out of all the creepy experiences that I have experienced with feeling like there is somebody out in the woods watching me or following me or whatever, there is no creepier experience than when you feel that gut feeling and you turn around and there's literally nothing to be seen. So we continue to walk, and I start to think to myself like, that was kind of weird, until we got to the end of this trail, and once again I heard behind me in those woods something go, hey. It was literally when I was about to turn around. Yeah, I think you get the point of this video, guys. Oh my God. Okay, now I'm out of breath, and we are walking back to the house now. Comment down below if you've ever experienced something like this out in the woods. And follow for more crazy stories of my life. There's nothing behind me, right? Okay, good.
So this guy says that his mom passed away 4 months ago, and ever since then he's been having trouble waking up in the morning. He works at a job where the times are different every single day, so sometimes he forgets to set the alarm, and he knows that he's irresponsible because obviously he relied on his mom to wake him up every morning. Ever since she passed away, he's obviously been having trouble getting up at a certain time. Sometimes he wakes up too early, sometimes he wakes up too late. So yesterday he says that he needed to wake up at 6 in the morning, and he was actually able to do so. He ends up getting up, turns on the boilers because he needed to take a shower, and then he went to lay down for a little bit just so that, you know, he can get the hot water going. He accidentally falls asleep, and he said that he doesn't know how long he had been asleep for when his mom yelling at him wakes him up. Jose. And he said that he wakes up, and even half asleep, he heard the rest, and she says, wake up, it's getting late. So he's half asleep, and he yells back at his mom saying, yes, I'm awake already, and stop screaming at me like that. I told you I don't like when you wake me up that way. That's when he started waking up, and he realized what was just happening and the reality of the situation. He said that he felt like a gut punch to his stomach because the reality came back to him that his mom is, you know, she's no longer there. He says that he was alone in his apartment, and there's no way anybody else would have been there to wake him up that way. Before he even went to the restroom to take a shower, he says that he sat down at the kitchen table and he just started crying and he couldn't stop. That feeling, you know, of waking up and thinking your mom was still there and then realizing that she isn't there was just a lot. If anything, I think it just tells him that she's still around and she's still taking care of him and looking out for him. But what do you guys think?
Let's read a scary story. This one is titled, Mannequins Are Appearing All Over My Town. I don't think it's a prank anymore. Welcome to the Creepy Cozy Cottage where creepy and cozy meet. So grab a blanket and get cozy because we're about to read a creepy story. We all thought it was an elaborate prank. The sun rose and the park was filled with mannequins. What else was the city supposed to think? Cops roped the place off. People laughed. The newscasters had a great time making jokes about the clothesless fashion show. That was Monday. By Tuesday, people were dying. It was a bus found in the middle of the road just to the east of the park. Sitting in the middle of the road, the door locked shut. The cops pried it open and blood spilled out, dripping down the step onto the pavement. The bodies inside had been flayed open, skinned, nothing left but stringy muscle and thick yellowed fat. They didn't tell anyone that, of course, but the reporters kept things kosher for any kids that might have been watching. But my cousin is the local Emmy here in Coppervale. Her name was Ginger. She was 42 and loved the color pink. The most girly pop woman you've ever met, except she handled dead bodies for her 9 to 5. I always ended up getting the dirty details from her when weird cases came in, but she freaked out this time, and who could blame her? 13 people, 2 of them under 16, skinned. Their flesh was missing. I worked the late night shift Tuesday. I'm not cool like Ginger. The most interesting thing that ever happens to me at this stop and shop is when one of the locals comes in drunker than usual. I caught someone pissing in the energy drink cooler last autumn. So yeah, it's just a normal gas station clerk shit. But that Tuesday, I was freaked out. Everyone in Coppervale was freaked. It was almost the end of my shift when I realized someone was in the parking lot just standing. I cleaned the bathroom and came back out, still there, standing by the pump, totally still. I pushed the door open. Hey, my voice carried through the silent dark. The figure didn't move. What the hell are you doing out here? A car pulled in, headlights catching on the shape. It wasn't human. It was a mannequin, just like the ones in the park. Cold fear washed over me. I backed into the gas station, closed the door, and locked it. The car paid at the pump and left. No one else came by. When I was brave enough to look outside again 20 minutes later, there was 3 more of them. One of them had something plastered all over it. I thought it was paper mache at first. Then another car pulled in, headlights blaring over the forms. This one didn't stop, just picked up speed and went out the other side of the parking lot. In those few moments when the lights were catching on the form of the mannequin, I realized it was flesh on it. The missing skin from one of those poor people on the bus. That's when I went back in and grabbed my phone. I already called 911. By the time I came back out into the front, there were about a dozen in the parking lot, all of them crowded close to the door. 5 of them were wearing human flesh. It was clinging to their false faces like a grotesque mask. I can't attach a picture because it's too gory. I hope I won't end up on Ginger's table tomorrow. That was pretty gory. Let me know what you thought of that story, and as always, if you have any scary stories of your own you'd like me to read, just send me a DM.
Mark's wife died 3 years ago in a car crash, but last night, she came home. Now he knows exactly how this sounds. That's honestly why he hasn't gone to the police or family or anyone, because he doesn't want people to think that he's crazy. And it kind of feels like if he says it out loud, that it makes it more real. His wife died 3 years ago in a massive accident on the highway during a heavy rainstorm. Now he didn't see the accident himself. By the time he had gotten there, the police had already covered up the car with a tarp, and the police officer had told him, "You don't want to go look." And he kind of wishes that he hadn't. After that, everything was a blur. People say that grief can change your memory, and maybe they're right. But every single night at 8:32 p.m., Mark looks toward the front door. And it's just sort of like a habit that he formed out of trauma, because that was the exact time that his wife would get home every single night from work. But yesterday, at exactly 8:32, Mark looked toward the front door, and someone knocked. It was 3 slow knocks. And he kind of like laughed to himself because he had looked over at the time and realized that it was 8:32, and he figured it must be a coincidence. It's probably just a delivery driver or maybe the neighborhood's kids like messing with him. But then he looked out the peephole. His wife was standing outside. Same dark coat, same black handbag, and her hair was even a little damp from the rain. She looked exactly the same as the day that she died. For a moment, he swears that his brain stopped working. He just sort of stood there, frozen, staring out the glass. And then she smiled, but it wasn't wide or unnatural. It was completely normal. Almost like it was just an ordinary day that she was getting home from work. Then she spoke, right through the door. "You're taking too long." This completely broke him, because those are the exact words that she would say anytime that he was taking a little bit too long to open up the door. He doesn't even remember opening the door, but as soon as he knew it, she was walking past him with faint, wet footprints on the hardwood floor. He couldn't breathe. He just kept staring at her hands. She was wearing the same gold wedding band that she had always worn. She walked into the kitchen and she asked, "Why are all the lights off?" Completely normal. All of her voice was the same, all of her movements were the same, everything was the same. So Mark asked her, "Where have you been?" And she says, "I've been at work, where else would I be?" Completely confused. Part of him wanted to believe it so badly, but something felt horribly wrong. It wasn't super obvious, it was a bunch of small things. She would smile just a second too late, or she would take tiny pauses before she answered any questions. And the thing that he noticed the most was that she wasn't really blinking, or at least not at the same rate that a normal person would. It was like he was staring at something that was trying really hard to be human. Then she looked toward the hallway mirror, and she completely froze. He noticed it immediately, but she wasn't staring at her own reflection. She was staring at him. Then she quietly asked, "Who's standing behind you?" He knew that nobody was behind him, but he instantly turned around, and the hallway was empty. But when he looked back at her, she wasn't smiling anymore. She looked so terrified. Her eyes were locked on the empty space over his shoulder. And then she whispered, "Don't let it learn your face." And then every single light in the house went out at the exact same time. And then he heard movement. Fast, heavy movement. It sounded like footsteps, but not one set. It sounded like multiple things running around way too fast to be human. So he quickly grabbed his phone and fumbled with the screen. And finally he turned on the flashlight and he aimed it at the kitchen, but it was empty. His wife was gone. For just a second, he thought he was crazy, but then he looked and the back door was wide open and wet footprints were seen going outside. But that wasn't it. He saw another set of footprints. They were long and they were distorted, and they stopped right behind where he was standing, like something had been looming over him the entire time. He didn't sleep at all that night. He just sat in the living room and waited for the sun to come up. He thought he was going insane, but tonight, at exactly 8:32, the knocking came back. He didn't answer it, but all he can hear outside is the sound of his wife crying. See, these are the kind of stories that I love reading, because that gave me full body chills. Anyways, thank you guys for listening to today's story on Explore Paranormal. As always, I'm Jason. Let me know in the comments if you guys like this story. throw a heart on the video just so it pushes it out to some other people, and give me a follow if you like stories like this, because I tell them all the time. And I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.
What would you do if you stayed in one of the most violent haunted houses that you had ever investigated, felt nothing and saw nothing the entire time, until you watched your footage back later? This is Scared with Jess, and today's story is about a woman who says that the house didn't haunt her while she was in it. It waited until she watched the footage back. I investigate haunted places for a living, not full-time. I'm not on TV or anything, but I've spent years filming old houses and abandoned buildings and places with violent histories, places where people swear something still lingers. And most of the time, you get nothing. It's just creaking pipes or drafts, or even bad wiring. People wanting a reason for the feeling they already walked in with. So when I got invited to spend a night in a house that had a reputation for being genuinely bad, I was ready for at least something. The place had a history people loved repeating. There was a murder in one room and a suicide in another. There was a fire that started in the upstairs hallway and stopped for no clear reason before it reached the nursery. 3 owners in 20 years. Everybody who stayed there claimed they saw something standing in the corners. I brought everything. Static cams, audio recorders, my spare batteries, 2 handhelds. I set cameras in the kitchen, the upstairs hall, the back bedroom, the staircase landing, and the room I planned to sleep in. I walked the whole house alone before dark. I checked every window and every door and every floorboard. I was in there from sunset to sunrise. And I felt nothing. That was the strange part. No cold spots, no footsteps, or dread, or sense of being watched. Nothing moved or whispered. Nothing even touched me. And at one point around 2 in the morning, I was actually embarrassed because I had built this house up so much in my head and it felt emptier than half the places I'd investigated before. I remember saying out loud in the kitchen, "Really?" Like I was annoyed at it. I slept at the back bedroom for maybe 3 hours on an air mattress with one camera facing me and another covering the far corner near the closet. And in the morning, I packed up and I drove home. I made my coffee and started reviewing footage. At first, it was exactly what I expected. Just a bunch of empty rooms, bad angles, my own flashlight sweeping through frame after frame, and me walking in and out of rooms checking equipment. And then I opened the kitchen footage. And in the corner of the room, behind where I had been standing the night before, there was someone there. At first, I thought it was just me crossing some frame weirdly, some kind of blur, or some kind of overlap. So I paused it, and it was me. Same clothes, my hair, and my build, standing in the corner, not checking equipment or moving through the room. I was just standing there looking straight towards the center of the kitchen where the other me, the real me, was talking into the handheld camera. I sat there for a full minute staring at the screen, and then I told myself it had to be a reflection. But there was nothing in that kitchen that could have reflected me from that angle. There wasn't a mirror or a glass cabinet. So I opened the hallway footage, and the same thing. I walked through the upstairs hall with my flashlight in my hand, scanning the walls and talking quietly to the camera. And at the far end of the hallway in the corner where the wall meets the banister, I'm already standing there, with my clothes and my hair all the same, even the same posture at first glance. But the face was off. That was what made my stomach drop. The eyes looked a little too small, and the mouth looked a little too big, but not stretched into some huge grin, just slightly wrong, like something had been seeing my face enough times to try copying it and still hadn't gotten it right. I opened the back bedroom footage next, and that one almost made me throw up. There I was, on the air mattress, asleep. And in the corner of the room beside the closet, there was another me already standing there watching. Not moving or blinking that I could tell. Just staring at my sleeping body with that blank, almost right face. I kept going because by that point, I didn't know what else to do. Every room had it. The staircase landing, the kitchen, the upstairs hall, the room with the burn patch on the floorboards, and the bedroom where I slept. In every clip, there was already a version of me in the corner before I entered. Not following me, but beating me there. I don't know how long I sat at my desk opening clip after clip before I realized I had stopped breathing normally. The only one I hadn't checked yet was the handheld footage from the night before, so I opened that. It was just me walking room to room, sounding bored, even amused. And at one point I laughed and said the whole place felt dead in the least interesting way possible. And then, in the kitchen clip, while I'm pointing the camera towards the sink and talking, I heard something on the audio. Not loud and not dramatic, just a woman's voice, very close to the mic saying, "Check the corner."
Somebody submitted a spooky story saying that they divorced their husband after 7 years of marriage. And the reason wasn't another woman, it was what she found in their basement. I am back with another spooky story. And for the sake of this video, everything is for entertainment purposes only. So we're gonna call the person who submitted the story Laura. Laura says now she doesn't know that everything she experienced was real. Maybe there were explanations for some of it, maybe not. All she knows is that she divorced her husband after 7 years of marriage. And the reason wasn't another woman, finally. It was what she found in their basement. Bro. So when Laura met her ex-husband, we're gonna call him Marcus. I'm really not good at guy names. Marcus was charming, successful, and very private. When Laura would ask him about his friends, he would give very vague answers. If he had meetings, he would simply say it's lodge business. Now, Laura says she knew he was a Freemason. He didn't necessarily hide that part. He also had a ring with the square and compass symbol. He attended meetings a few times a month. Laura didn't think much of it at first. Now, strange things officially started to her knowledge after they got married. Sometimes he would leave the house after midnight and return just before sunrise. And when she would question him about his whereabouts, he would kiss her on the forehead and say, "You don't need to worry about that." And then he would get these suspicious phone calls. His phone would ring once and he would look at it and immediately leave the room. Every single time. One night she woke up, he wasn't in bed. She went looking for him and found him in the backyard. He was just standing there looking up at the moon. She called his name twice before he answered. When he turned around, his expression was completely blank. And that really freaked her out for some reason. Now she says she doesn't know much about Freemasonry or what they do in their meetings. So you know what? She convinces herself that maybe she's just being paranoid. Then Lauren's grandmother passes away. Well, at the grandmother's funeral, something really weird happened. An elderly man approached Laura, looked at Marcus, then back at her, and it looked like he had seen a ghost. And he asked Laura, "Are you married to him?" After she answered, the man didn't say anything, he just walked away. Again, strange, but not enough to make a conclusion. So a few months later, Marcus left for what he called an emergency lodge meeting, and he forgot his laptop. Now, Laura says she wasn't snooping at first. She was looking for recipes that they had saved, and then she found a hidden folder. Inside were hundreds of photographs. Most of them were normal, until they weren't. There were pictures of men standing in dark robes. There were pictures taken inside weird buildings only lit by candles. There were pictures of different symbols painted on floors, pictures of people wearing masks, and these were very creepy masks. The masks were animalistic, and then Laura saw one picture that made her blood run cold. This one creeped me out too. She said it was their wedding day, except she'd never seen this photo before. She was standing at the altar smiling. Behind her, hidden in the shadow, stood 12 men in black robes, watching. Laura says she closes the laptop, but that night she could not sleep. Later that same night, she started hearing noises coming from downstairs, and it sounded like footsteps. Now Marcus wasn't home. Again, he's on a business trip. Now Laura grabbed her flashlight, followed the sound, and it led her to the basement. And what she uncovered in the basement truly creeped me out. This story is literally so long, but I'm recording part 2 right now. So make sure you leave a comment for part 2. Laura is hearing all these weird noises coming from downstairs. She grabs her flashlight and follows the sound. It led to the basement. The basement door was somehow open when she knew she closed it. The light switch, for some reason, is not working. The only illumination came from her flashlight. And this is when she noticed the wall. So there was a section of shelving that she somehow never paid attention to. Behind it was another door. A small one, almost hidden. Laura says she doesn't know why she opened it, and part of her wishes that she hadn't. Inside was a room no bigger than a walk-in closet. The walls were covered in symbols. There were melted candles all over the floor, and she said it was looking a little demonic in there. She said in the center was a wooden box. So she grabs the box, and inside the box were more photographs. Photographs of strangers, her. Some pictures were taken when she was asleep. Some pictures were taken when she was at work. Pictures taken before her and Marcus ever even met. And at the bottom of a box was a note written in her husband's handwriting. All it said was selected, approved, accepted. She closed the box, closes the doors, goes back to bed, and acts like nothing happened. Marcus winds up coming back home, and she was acting very strange. Marcus went downstairs to the basement, came back upstairs, and started asking Laura questions. Now, Laura finally comes clean and tells him that yes, she saw the wooden box downstairs in the basement. He didn't look angry or disappointed. He just looked at her like she just ruined something. And for a long moment, neither of them said anything. Finally breaks the silence and says that she wasn't technically supposed to find that until later. And she asked him, well, what does it mean? And again, very vague answers, not giving her an answer. She was so frustrated and freaked out at this point that the next morning she packed a bag and left. She said they divorced within 6 months. And the crazy thing is, he never fought it. They never argue about it. He never asked her to stay. He just agreed to the divorce, like, okay. The creepiest part though happened after everything was finalized. Laura moves 3 states away, started over, new apartment, new job, new life. One afternoon, almost a year later, she opens her mailbox. Inside was a plain white envelope. No return address, no stamp, just her name. And inside was a single photograph. Laura says she still doesn't. Now, Laura says that she still doesn't know what it means, and honestly, she's too afraid to find out. It sounds like this story is ongoing, but that is all she submitted to me so far. Make sure you hit that follow button for more spooky content, or if you have a spooky story that you want me to tell, feel free to submit it to me via DM. From your favorite Haitian homegirl.
My ex-husband was the most skeptical person I've ever met, and that's why I knew something was deeply wrong the moment he called me to tell me that the woman that he had picked up had hooves instead of feet. This is Kay's submission to Spooky Scary Storytime, and she says that while she believes in the paranormal, her ex-husband did not. He was Middle Eastern, he was deeply religious, and he was completely skeptical of ghosts, of spirits, and of anything paranormal. In fact, the only entity that he would even acknowledge or entertain was jinn, because they're mentioned in the Quran. And so in his mind, if they could come from Allah, then they were possible, but everything else was nonsense. And at the time, he drove for a rideshare service on weekends and on evenings. And one night, he stayed out driving longer than he usually did. Because Kay had to be at work at 6 o'clock the next morning, she went to bed instead of waiting up for him like she usually did. And she heard him come in around 2 or 3 in the morning, but she was asleep and she flipped over. And the next morning started like any other. She went to work, and around 10 in the morning, he texted her saying good morning. She hadn't talked to him since the night before, so she responded and she was like, how are you feeling? Are you tired? I heard you come in, but how was your night? And he immediately responded and he said, I'm not okay. Can I call you, or are you in a meeting right now? She said, no, I'm free. You can call me right now. And so he did. And when she picked up the phone, she said her stomach dropped because she could immediately tell that something was wrong. His voice was shaking. He sounded terrified. And he told her that sometime during the night, he had received a ride request from a man, but it was unusual because there was no destination listed. So curious, he contacted the rider, and a man answered and said, oh, we're just going about 20 minutes from downtown. And this checked out with what the app was showing the fare would be. So he accepted the ride and he headed downtown. But during the ride to pick up the rider, he said that he felt like something was off because the streets were very quiet. There were no cars, no pedestrians, and no movement, which was extremely unlikely in the city where they lived on a weekend night. And when he arrived at the pickup location, he didn't see anyone. And so he pulled over and he pulled out his phone to contact the rider. But as soon as his hand touched the phone, there was a knock on the window that caused him to jump. Turning toward the sound, he expected to see a man, the man that he had talked to on the phone, who was maybe running late or coming from a different direction. But instead, there stood a woman who was blonde and wearing a light blue dress, and nothing about her appeared unusual. But he didn't see a man, and he knew that the ride had been requested by a man, and so he rolled down the window, and the woman explains that the man was the one who requested the ride for her, and she called him by name, and so he said, okay, no worries, and he unlocked the doors, and she came around and got in the passenger side in the front seat. This struck him as strange because in all of his years of driving, apparently almost nobody sits in the front seat. And trying to be polite, he says, oh, are you sure you don't want to sit in the back? There's plenty more room back there. And she says, no, I need to sit in the front seat because of my accident. He told Kay that her voice was unnaturally deep and raspy. And he said, oh, what happened? And she said, it's better if you just don't know anything. He told Kay that he didn't like that, but he was still trying to be friendly and make conversation as they drove, but she was only answering him in 1 or 2 word answers. And eventually they arrived at the destination that the man had provided when he had contacted him earlier. And she says, actually, can you take me to the McDonald's across town, the one that's open 24 hours? He said, I can, but we have to contact the man who originally requested the ride because he's going to have to update the location in the app. And so they did that and everything was fine. And he began driving across town to the McDonald's. As they drove, his uneasiness only grew because she was still only answering him in 1 or 2 word answers and just staring out the window. And they still hadn't seen anyone else on the roads. No other cars, no other people. It was just a very eerie sensation. And so finally they arrive at this McDonald's, the one that's always open 24 hours. But as he pulls in, his fear turned into a genuine panic because he noticed that the McDonald's was closed and he felt like something at this point was deeply wrong. She didn't seem fazed by the McDonald's being closed and she made no movement to get out of the car. So he turns to her and he's like, do you want me to take you back to your original destination? And she says, no, actually, there's a park on the other side of town. Will you take me there? By now he knew that something was up, so he quietly pressed the emergency button within the app. Now, I'm not sure how the emergency assistance button works in a rideshare app, so maybe somebody that drives can weigh in here, but basically the way that she described it in this email was they press it and then someone is expected to call pretty much immediately. But no call came, and in fact, he noticed that his phone service was going in and out. And they stopped at a red light, and then something in him told him to look down at her feet, and so he did. And when he did, he noticed that she did not have feet. She had hooves. They were not prosthetics. They were not shoes. They were hooves that went into her leg that then went under her dress. He told Kay that he kept looking down and looking back and looking down and looking back, and he still could not process what he was seeing, and he wasn't sure what was sitting beside him. So he told Kay that he prayed, and meanwhile there was still no call from the emergency dispatcher, and he figured that the best thing that he could do is just keep his head straight and pretend that he didn't notice. And eventually they reached the park, and she says, stop here. He pulled over and she stepped out without so much as another word, but the second the door slammed, his phone rang and it was the emergency dispatcher. As he answered, he looked through the window at the woman and he could not believe what he was seeing because he told Kay that the woman was changing before his eyes and her blonde hair was turning black and her blue dress was also turning black. The dispatcher asked if he still needed assistance, but barely able to think, he said, no, the passenger has exited my vehicle and I'm okay now. But he still couldn't stop watching this woman and he watched her walk across the field, and then as she got to the tree line, he told Kay that she disappeared into thin air. After this, he apparently immediately called his mother in a panic, and she told him to pray and go to the mosque, and so that's what he did. Kay says when he first told her this, she honestly struggled to believe him, because this was the same man that mocked her anytime she talked about anything supernatural or paranormal, and it just didn't sound believable. And so she was like, did you take anything that could have altered your mind? Even though she knew him as someone who was sober and who didn't take substances. And then she asked, like, are you sure she wasn't an amputee and maybe had like prosthetics or something? And he screamed at her. He was like, no, they were hooves. They were like donkey feet. Her legs went straight into them. I know what I saw, and I saw her change before my eyes and disappear. And Kay says the terror in his voice was undeniable, and so after that, she just told him she believed him. But she says following that encounter, paranormal activity around him started to escalate. It was just the two of them in their apartment, and she often cooked for him and would leave a plate of food for him in a certain place, but he would get home and he would complain that he couldn't find the food. And so she actually started taking photos and videos of where she left the food to send to him so he would know exactly where she left it. But he would get home and the food would be completely gone, and this made no sense. And at first she accused him of eating it and forgetting it, but this happened so often that she actually started leaving the plate, sending him the photo, and then meeting him at the door when he returned home from work so they could walk together where she had left the food, and it would be gone. But then the food would reappear the next morning in a place that made no sense. And then he started complaining that he would be in the bathroom alone and he would watch the doorknob turn. While showering, he told her that the curtain often suddenly was ripped open. It never seemed to let up, and months later, their marriage ended. During their separation and divorce, she was spending a lot of time with family, and he continued complaining about these things happening to him. And that's when she and her family stumbled across some Native American folklore about the deer woman. And whether this is what that woman was is up for debate, but Kay says basically she is a powerful, shape-shifting spirit, and she often appears as a beautiful woman who conceals her deer hooves, and she is described as a protector of both women and children. Other stories tell of her punishing men who harm or mistreat them. And so she finds some photos online and she just sends them to her ex-husband without context. And she was like, does this look familiar to you? Moments later, her phone rings and it's her husband and he's panicking. He goes, where did you find these photos? This is the woman that got in my car. You have to tell me who this woman is. He says, you have to believe me. This is her. And she says to this day, she's still not sure what he encountered that night, whether it was something otherworldly, whether it was jinn, whether it was a dear woman, or something else entirely. But what she is sure of is that her ex-husband was never the same after that night. And she says, strangely enough, after that encounter, his life fell apart in even worse ways. And she's not sure if that's connected or if that's coincidence, but that's his story. And she's curious as to what you all think. So let her know your thoughts. And if you have a spooky, scary story time you think no one would believe, or about the creepiest encounter you've ever had, please send it in. We would love to hear it.
Y'all ever notice how the people who laugh the hardest at spiritual stuff are usually the first ones looking over their shoulder when something starts feeling off? Yeah, because a Haitian woman sent me this story, and honestly, after hearing it, I kind of understand why some people don't play with spiritual stuff, even if they don't believe in it. And hey, Toxins, welcome back to my page where I don't spill tea, I brew coffee. And not everything that I serve is gonna be safe. Now, before I start, because I already know how y'all are, this is somebody else's story, their beliefs, their experiences, so do whatever you want to do with it. But this woman told me growing up in her family, there were certain things that you simply do not joke about. Not because somebody would beat you or you would get grounded, but it was most definitely because, according to her grandmother, some things hear you even when you think nobody else does. And that's a fact. Now, she said she had this cousin. And y'all know how every family got that cousin. The one that thinks everything is funny. Yeah, that one. And this man thought that all spiritual stuff was fake. It didn't matter if it was like involving the church. It didn't matter if it was involving the ancestors. It didn't matter if it was the Loa. To him, everything was jokes. Everything was entertainment. Everything was, oh, prove it to me energy. And according to her, one summer night, everybody was sitting outside talking. The grandmother, the aunts, the uncles, kids was running around. It was just a normal night. And somehow the conversation turned spiritual. And somebody mentioned aloha. Somebody mentioned respecting what people practices and respecting what people practice even if you don't understand it. And this cousin started laughing, y'all. Started mocking and started repeating names and started saying stuff like, if something was real out there, then show me. Big mistake. And according to her, her grandmother said everybody got quiet. Very uncomfortable quiet. And the grandmother told him, don't ask questions to things that you're not ready to hear the answers to, basically. Now, he laughed. He kept laughing, y'all, and nothing happened that night. See, that's the part that got me. Because according to her, that's why he got more confident. Because nothing happened. Usually things don't happen like that anyways. He went to sleep. He woke up normal. He went to work. Everything was normal. Day 2 came. Everything was normal. And then around the day 3, things got strange. She said he started waking up every night, same time, like clockwork. Didn't matter when he went to sleep, didn't matter how tired he was, same exact time. Then came the dreams. Now, according to her, he refused to explain the dreams. He would only say things like, I keep seeing the same person. Oh, baby, he was being haunted. His ass get. Then he stopped sleeping, y'all. He stopped sleeping with the bedroom door closed, and then he started leaving the lights on, and then the cousin that laughed at everything stopped laughing. And according to her, one night he woke everybody up, talking about somebody was walking through the hallways. Problem was, everybody had been asleep. Everybody else was asleep now. Nobody heard no footsteps. Nobody saw anything. They seen nothing. And eventually he asked his grandmother for help. I bet he did. And according to her, his grandmother looked at him and said something that she still remembers years later. The problem isn't always what answer. Sometimes the problem is believing nothing could. Facts, granny. Now look, I'm not telling y'all what to believe. But I'm telling y'all, maybe don't mock things that people spend generations warning you about, because curiosity and confidence, they are not the same thing. Do you understand that? And if y'all got a creepy story or a spiritual experience or family folklore or something that you can't explain, then send it to my email that's right here. Yeah, your stories just might end up in one of my future videos, because I am doing spooky scary story times on Tuesdays and Wednesdays now. And I'm serving it black today. I want y'all to drink from a clean source, and I love y'all. Oh, and if you're one of my toxins that love scary stories, spiritual warnings, and the kind of stories that make you check the hallway twice before going to bed, you know what that subscribe button is. I'll see y'all in the next video.
I got another Appalachia story for you. West Virginia. And this one sounds like a horror movie. The story that this woman tells makes you seriously question whether you would ever want to work a night shift again. So this woman, we're going to call her Courtney for the story, works in a medical billing office in West Virginia. This is an old repurposed clinic from the 60s. Brick building right on the edge of a small town and a wooden ridge, basically growing up against the back of it. So she's outside at around 3 a.m. on her smoke break, and she is sitting on this really low stone wall. So this wall she's sitting on is between the parking lot and the tree line, and she's just sitting there scrolling away on her phone, trying to stay awake as one does at 3 o'clock in the morning on that shift. So she's sitting there for about 3 minutes, and then she gets that prickling feeling up on the back of her neck. You know, the one where you just know something is watching you. So instinctively, she looks up and she sees there is a man standing along the wood line up against the edge of the property, about 20 feet away from her. Courtney says he is hunched over in this really wrong posture. She said his torso was twisted in a way, or like an angle that had to be painful. And what he was wearing, he was wearing this long, dirty trench coat that went down to about his shin. He had on blue surgical gloves and a faded medical mask, and it was covering everything below his eyes. And his eyes wide open, but sunken in. His eyes almost sunk into these dark hollows, yet they beamed in her direction, just staring at her. So Courtney is super nervous, obviously, and she's trying to keep it together and keep it nonchalant. So she's going back down with her eyes, looking down at her phone, kind of trying to play it off, but her hand is shaking. So for a little while, every now and then, she just like glances up and then looks back down, and she sees that he is not moving at all. Like he is in that same weird posture and just staring at her. So Courtney hears a coal truck in the distance, like down in the valley, and it kind of snaps her out of her, back and forth, up and down looking, just for a second. And then she kind of looks in the direction of the coal truck, looks back down at her phone, and in that amount of time, like 3 seconds, she looks up and oh my freaking gosh, she sees him. He is now sitting directly next to her, like an inch away from her freaking body. Seconds ago, he was 20 feet away, not moving. And now, right next to her. Like humanly impossible. She said he was sitting so close to her, she could hear his breathing. She said it sounded wet and rhythmic. She described it as, oh my gosh, somebody blowing bubbles through a straw. So everything inside of her is just screaming. Alarm bells are going off. But she grew up in Appalachia, so she is trying to think of the best course of action. She goes with try to be polite and gives him this very weak, forced smile. Now, I thought we don't acknowledge things in the Appalachia, but maybe I'm not up to par on the rule book. Okay, so she is terrified. She is smiling awkwardly. And then he reaches his gloved hand out towards her and he just says, "Cigarette?" So she fumbles with her pack of cigarettes and shakingly takes one out and hands it to him. He takes it and he's just holding it. He's just zoning out, holding the cigarette in his hand. He doesn't put it up to his lips or, mask. And he is just staring across the lot, just blank. So she says, "Do you need a light?" And he slowly turns and looks at her again. And with a stiffness raises both thumbs up at her and just holds both thumbs, like giving her the thumbs up for 10 of the longest seconds straight of her life. And he's just staring at her with the thumbs up. So then she kind of gestures with the lighter and asks again. And he says, yes, I need one. And so she kind of hands it towards him. And with his gloved hand, he reaches to take the lighter from her. And his fingers graze her hand. And she said it was freezing to the touch, like completely way too cold for the temperature outside. So guys, he puts the cigarette in his mouth through the mask and he lights it through the mask. And then he hands her the lighter back. So she crushes her cigarette out and she kind of jumps up and she's doing everything in her power to be as nonchalant as possible, but getting the F out of there. And she's like, have a good night. And she turns and walks away to the safety of the building. And guys, Courtney gets almost to the door when all of a sudden she hears a menacing laughing. She says it was deep and wet and it sounded multiplied, as though there were multiple of whatever the heck that was laughing, all in different tones. So she doesn't even look back. She just gets inside, closes the door and locks it behind her and just stands there trying to catch her breath and to kind of relax now that she seems to be safe. And then she finally brings herself to look out the security window and there is nobody there. The wall that they were just sitting on, totally empty. And she's looking around and there is nobody anywhere in the whole area. And she said all that she saw lying there in the gravel right where he was a single cigarette snapped perfectly in half, not lit. She said she has never found out who or what the heck that thing was. Nobody else had reported anything similar, and she still does work on that night shift. I think it would be time to find a new job. How freaking creepy. Drop your thoughts in the comments, y'all. And if you have a creepy story of your own, you know what to do. And if you're new here, you gotta follow for more creepy story time.
A series of spooky stories, except for tell me the most unhinged thing your mother-in-law has ever said to you. Have a seat, these are a fucking doozy. My mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's at 55, and my mother-in-law told me, I feel so lucky that your mom is sick because that means I'll become the main grandmother. Not if you're in the grave first, bitch. Our son died at 2 months old, and my monster-in-law is upset that my husband and I didn't tell her that we were sorry for her loss. My husband and I have cut all ties, and it was his decision. Good for him. She can go straight to hell. When we announced our first pregnancy, she said, oh, I was expecting you guys to announce that you're getting a divorce. Ugh. I don't think you need to be here. My husband was having heart surgery. I was in the hospital over Thanksgiving. I was so sick and almost died. My husband wouldn't have dinner while I was in the hospital. He didn't want me to not be with family. My mother-in-law said that I ruined her Thanksgiving. I'm about to ruin a whole lot fucking more for you if you don't get the fuck out of my face. She posted on Facebook that I was being selfish while actively in labor because we didn't want anyone in the room. When are these folks gonna realize it's not fucking about them? I left my 6-week-old daughter with her for the day, and when I came home, she said she never cried once with me. I don't know why she cries so much with you. She's never watched her again. And I'm sure she let social media know all about it. Some women, it takes a few tries. Me, I just felt it in the air and sneezed, and I was pregnant while actively miscarrying my baby. My mother-in-law called to tell me that her son was cheating on me. He was at home with me. He went to confront her and she said I lied to him about her phone call. When he told her that he had heard it himself, she started crying and blaming her divorce from 20 plus years ago on her actions. And I can bet you the $3 in my fucking bank account that this bitch doesn't believe in counseling. Just tell me if you guys are having a girl so I can be disappointed at my gender reveal. That type of shit will never not be weird to me. When my dad died unexpectedly 3 months before my wedding, I was sad after I got home from his funeral, and she said, I gave you a week to grieve, but we need to get back to wedding planning. We need to start planning your funeral now, actually, because there's no way that you're fucking serious. There's no way. Told me that when my husband upgrades my wedding set to give my engagement ring to her so she could put it on a chain and wear it as a necklace. There's more, but those need trigger warnings. Some of these women and the obsessions with their son. That I was lazy for napping while my newborn was sleeping. Get the fuck out of my house. Bought a white dress to wear to my wedding. Oh my God. The thrill of being a grandparent was taken away from us when you said that we could not post pics of the baby on Facebook. Not a joke. I'll give you a thrill. I told her I got down to 160 pounds and she said if I weighed 160 pounds, I'd feel like a house. She told my husband that I needed to get a schmushmortion because we are both too young to be parents. I'm 23 and he's 27. Mine just hasn't come to terms with accepting my husband doesn't make her a priority anymore. Or that maybe he prioritizes his wife instead of his mommy as a grown man. Not my current mother-in-law, but my ex-mother-in-law told me 11 years ago while I was carrying her first grandchild that she hopes we both die during childbirth. Oh, the way that I would have sent her to Jesus right then and there, we'll see who's gonna die. Touched my stomach at a family party and referred to my baby as her baby multiple times. Call the police. Call the police and get a restraining order immediately. She wanted to adopt a child with my husband and live with him and the kid and just visit me. Oh my God. That is the epitome of obsession. And it's giving incestuous. She posted a picture of my husband and his ex-girlfriend from when he was a teenager, tagged me, and said, what a beautiful couple. Oh my God. And when I asked her about it, all she said was, I thought it was funny. My husband did not think it was funny because it's not fucking funny. It's not. You know what's funny? Missing a front tooth or two. The way y'all was supposed to fold y'all mother-in-law's clothes with her still in them and y'all didn't is crazy. Because let me fucking tell you something. These are audacious. These are audacious. Why are you telling me this? When I called and told her that her son was having an affair. Like mother, like son, I guess. Apple, tree. She asked me if I could get induced 3 weeks early because she had a Europe cruise scheduled during my due date. It's so appalling how selfish these people are. 3 days postpartum, she came over, looked at my son and goes, are you sure it's his kid? Insinuating that it was not my husband's child. My mom was there and thank God. Between her and my husband stood up for me because I was so in shock. I hope you're no contact. There will be a part 2.
I used to deliver medical supplies to nursing home and assistant living facilities. There's still one stop that I made that I think about years later. It was a small place out in the country. There was maybe 20 residents. Nothing unusual about the place. It was fine. The only thing that might have been a little bit weird is there was an old lady that asked me the same question every single time I visited. She would ask me, did you come alone? And I'm not kidding. Every single time I visited, she asked me that. I told her yes, and she nodded like she was relieved. There's one specific afternoon when I came in later than usual because I was stuck in traffic. And when I showed up, she was standing next to the reception desk, and she looked at me and she said, you're late. And I just kind of smiled and I said, I know, like I got stuck in traffic. And then she asked me, did he come with you this time? And I assumed that she was just confused, and I said no. And then her face changed and she looked a little concerned. She just kind of said, that's strange. And before I could ask what she meant by that, one of the nurses redirected her. Anyways, I finished my delivery and I left. But then a week later I came back and I noticed that that old lady who was always there wasn't there this time. One of the nurses informed me that she did pass away a few days earlier, and I was a little sad because I did talk to her every time I visited. A couple minutes later, a resident that I've never spoken to before, he wheeled over in his wheelchair to me. He looked out the front window and he was looking at my truck and he was like, did she stop asking you about the man finally? And I was like, what man? And he said, he pointed over to my truck and he said, the man that stands behind you every time you arrive. I told him there wasn't anybody ever with me, and he just kind of shrugged his shoulders and he was like, oh, that's what she used to say too. At that point, I just felt like the residents were feeding off each other's confusion. I tried brushing it off. Before I was leaving on that delivery, the curiosity got the best of me, and I went and I talked to one of the nurses, and I said, hey, did anybody talk to you about a man that would come with me? What was she talking about? And the nurse looked at me and she said, she wasn't the only one that saw the man. And I got a little weirded out, and I just kind of looked at her and I said, okay, well, what does this man look like? She said that he was tall, he was in a dark coat, and he was always standing behind me. I didn't like that answer very much because that's what the old man told me that he looked like as well, and I know that they don't really converse because they're in different areas of the facility. So that definitely creeped me out. The nurse told me not to worry about it. Sometimes the older residents, they tend to share ideas, whatever. And then about a month later, I was doing some paperwork in my truck before I left the facility. And I looked out in my mirror, and just for a second, I saw a glance of a tall figure, coat, and they were looking kind of downwards. I got out of my car immediately. I thought that I was just imagining things. I got out, I didn't see anything, so I went back to go into my truck again. And this time, when I looked in my passenger seat, there was a little handwritten note on it. And on the note, it said, "She wasn't looking at you." Now, people do say when you're close to death, the veil is a little thinner and you do see things that others cannot.
Want to get creeped out? I have a crazy story of someone who tried the shoebox telephone game. And if you don't know what the shoebox telephone game is, I have a video on it, but essentially you write a letter to someone who has passed away and then you wait for them to contact you. You do this through basically creating this telephone with a shoebox, okay? We will call her Sabrina. It does start a little bit sad, but most of these do because people are writing to people who are passed away. Sabrina was writing a letter to her best friend that had passed away from an overdose, whose name was Morgan. She does the ritual, writes her a beautiful letter saying all the things she wants to update her on, all the things she misses about her, and asking questions about if she's watching over her, what she should be doing with certain aspects of her life. And she actually goes 2 weeks after performing the ritual before she has a dream about her best friend Morgan calling her. She wakes up at 3:17 a.m. after the dream, goes into her closet, puts the cup to her ear, and listens. Morgan is telling her things that you would want to hear from someone who passed away, like, "I'm so proud of you, I'm okay, I'm happy where I am," nice things. But she also tells Sabrina that her boyfriend is cheating on her. Next thing you know, Sabrina is waking up in her closet in the morning. So she's like, did I dream this? Did this really happen? I don't know. She follows the disposal instructions of the ritual, but that weekend she's over at her boyfriend's house and he's in the shower and she decides to do something that she has never done before, and that is go through his phone. Something calls her to click on a conversation that her boyfriend is having with his friend Steven. And it turns out that Steven is not Steven, it's a girl who he has in fact been cheating on her with, getting messages from, getting nudes from, all of the things you do not want to find on your partner's phone. Was this Sabrina sleeping and having this intuition? Did this information come from within herself? Or did the ritual work and did she actually get this information from Morgan?
Have you ever heard the old saying, you shouldn't step or stand on a grave? Now, there was this young adult named Barry, and Barry and his friends decided they wanted to go out to the cemetery one night. Now, this cemetery was known to be haunted, and there were all these stories and legends. So him and his buddies, they go to the cemetery, and they're walking around with flashlights, kind of scaring each other. And he said that he was walking on the graves, and one of his friends said, "Hey, Barry, like, you shouldn't walk on top of the graves or stand on them, like it's bad luck." And Barry said, "What are you talking about? Like, I don't believe in any of that." So he starts stomping on this grave and then like spits on it and is like, "What? What's going to happen to me? A ghost going to get me?" So he said, while they were in the cemetery, nothing really happened. So he didn't think anything of stepping on the grave or anything. Well, when he got back home, he just had kind of this bad feeling that maybe he shouldn't have done that. And so when he got to his house, he goes inside and his girlfriend is in the kitchen and she's cooking a big meal. Barry says, "Hey, what's up?" and stuff. And she goes, "Where'd you go?" And he goes, "Oh, I went out to the cemetery with some of my buddies." Well, as he's talking to his girlfriend, he sees someone standing behind her. And he's like, who's behind you? And she's like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, do you have a guy in the house or something? Like, who's behind you? And she looks around and she's like, "What are you talking about? There's no one behind me." And he said, there's a guy standing behind you. And like, she couldn't see him, but he could see this guy, like, and he was wearing a flannel and jeans and boots. And he had just this very pale, long face, this brown kind of shaggy hair, and a, longer kind of beard. And he's just standing behind his wife. And, Barry's kind of like, "What's going on? Like, you don't see that?" And she's like, "No, I don't, or you're starting to scare me." So Barry's like, whatever. He goes out of the room. He comes back. He doesn't see the guy anymore. And so that night, right, he is laying in bed and his girlfriend's right next to him. He is just like tossing and turning because he can't really sleep because he's thinking about, what happened at the cemetery. And when he turns over towards where his girlfriend's sleeping, he sees this man, the same man he's seen behind his girlfriend. And he is in between him and his girlfriend. And he jumps out of bed and he's like, "What the heck? Who are you? Who are you? What are you doing here?" And his wife's like, or his girlfriend's like, "What do you mean? Like, what are you talking about? Like, what's going on?" And he's like, "Who's the man in the bed?" And she's like, "There's no man in the bed." And so like he walks out of the room and is like, I can't handle this. He comes back into the room to apologize to his girlfriend and check to see if that he can still see this guy, and the guy's not in there. And for like weeks he was like seeing this guy standing behind his girlfriend. And so he said he got in his car one night, he drove to the cemetery, and he went back to that grave that he had stomped on, and he apologized and was like, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disrespect you, and like I hope you can forgive me and leave me alone." And he said, like, all of a sudden he just got this overwhelming feeling like everything was going to be okay. And he went back home and he didn't see this guy anymore.
This hut is probably considered the most haunted place in Antarctica, and the story behind it is pretty wild. It is named Scott's Hut, after a British explorer named Robert Falcon Scott, who was famous for his early Antarctica expeditions. He had already been to Antarctica once before during what he called the Discovery Expedition from 1901 to 1904, but for his second expedition, the Terra Nova Expedition, he wanted a better location that was warmer and less likely to trap his ship in sea ice. So, after arriving in 1911, the team selected the area of Cape Evans and quickly got to work building a new base. And within just 9 days, Scott's hut was erected. Scott's main goal was to be the first person to reach the South Pole. It was an 800-mile venture into below freezing temperatures, climbing over ice shelves and glaciers, and it took them 78 days. But when they arrived, they found that a Norwegian explorer had already beaten them there a month earlier. So now, Scott and his team of 4 other men had to turn around and travel another 800 miles back to the hut after their dream-crushing defeat. But on their return trip, the men on the team very slowly began dying off one by one. The first was a 41-year-old man named Edgar Evans, who had started to deteriorate pretty quickly after leaving the pole. He began to get confused, and about a month into their journey, after collapsing near the foot of a glacier, he would later die in their tent. And unfortunately, after his death, the remaining 4 men had to continue north. Along the way, 32-year-old Lawrence Oates was having a hard time keeping up due to gangrene in his feet. During a blizzard 2 months into their journey, Oates reportedly said, quote, "I'm just going outside and maybe some time." He walked out into the storm and vanished. His body was never recovered, and it's believed that he sacrificed himself so that he wouldn't continue to slow down the rest of the men. The final 3 men continued to push on, but a few days after Oates' death, they became trapped in their tent during a blizzard that wouldn't let up. They were only 11 miles from a supply depot, but had very little food and almost no fuel left for melting the snow into water. Wilson and Bowers were the first to die, leaving Scott as the last remaining survivor. On March 29, 1912, he wrote the following in his diary: "For God's sake, look after our people." More than 7 months had gone by before their tent would be discovered buried under the snow. Their bodies were left where they lay, and a cross made from skis was built at the top. Because of the tragedy tied to it, Scott's hut is now considered haunted. Everything has been perfectly preserved through the years, and visitors here have reported canned foods flying off from the shelves, voices heard calling from empty corners, and doors reportedly slamming on their own.
Let's look at some creepy Reddit pictures. My friend took this photo while exploring an abandoned mental hospital. There are many stories from all kinds of visitors throughout the years who claim to have seen a very tall man lurking around the grounds. I even remember hearing a story about a woman who saw this man and thought he was part of their group because he kept following them from room to room. And just for reference, I'm 6'5", and the stature of this man is considerably larger than my own. I was working a night shift at a skilled nursing facility when I heard something in the corner of a resident's room. I didn't see anything at first, but after hearing coworkers share ghost stories about the facility before, I decided to take a picture. When I looked back at the photo, I noticed what looked like a silhouette standing in the corner that I definitely didn't see when I took it. I can't find any context for this picture, but it's also taken in a hospital and you won't miss it. Let's look at some creepy security camera videos that I found on Reddit. I got an alert for something walking past my security cameras, and I was expecting a car thief. This has to be a bug or something, right? My mom sent me this footage of the backyard camera from 8:52 p.m. For context, the backyard is completely fenced in and it's the middle of January, so we can rule out somebody running around. Wind seems minimal at the time of the shadow, and the interaction with the light is super weird. I see a person running, but maybe backwards, but I honestly have no idea. I was at work yesterday when I got a notification from my doorbell camera saying motion detected. I checked the recorded video to see this.
I was never actually alone in my childhood home. I need to tell you guys this ghost story. This story was sent into my email, and if you have any ghost stories, paranormal encounters, or scary stories that you want to share, you can send them to the email in my bio. Growing up, the house my family lived in always had a strange atmosphere. It's hard to explain. Nothing looked unusual. It hadn't been abandoned or some creepy old building, but from the moment you walked through the front door, there was a feeling, especially upstairs. It always felt like someone was there, watching, just out of sight. Every trip to the bathroom at night felt like a race. Every time I walked up the stairs, I'd get this overwhelming urge to turn around because I felt absolutely convinced something was right behind me. After a while, me and my family got used to it. It became normal, just part of living there. But pretty soon, strange things started happening. One day, my mom was walking home from the supermarket when a friend recognized and stopped her. "Why isn't your daughter at school today?" she asked. My mom had laughed and said, "What do you mean? I just finished dropping her off this morning." But her friend shook her head. "No, I just waved at her. She was sitting in her bedroom window." My mom was understandably confused and a little freaked out. I wasn't at home. She had dropped me off at school that morning. I was sitting in a classroom right then, miles away. Yet, apparently, someone was sitting in my bedroom window. Someone who looked enough like me that a family friend was convinced it was me. A different afternoon, everyone was out of the house except for my brother. He was upstairs when he started hearing a loud banging noise coming from downstairs. Over and over and over again, bang, bang, bang. He said it sounded exactly like the lid of my mom's metal bread bin slamming shut repeatedly. At first, he assumed someone had come home, so he went downstairs to see who was there. But when he got down there, the house was completely empty. The bread bin was untouched, as it had been when we had left it, and the banging he had heard stopped the moment he reached the kitchen. My other brother, one evening, was walking down the hill toward our house, and as he got closer, he found himself looking up towards his bedroom window. And that's when he saw someone standing there, looking out of the window back at him. He was absolutely certain somebody was inside. He assumed one of us were home, but when he got there, the house was empty. It had scared him so badly that he refused to go back inside, and he sat outside waiting for the rest of us to come home. Then things started disappearing. Weird things like cooker rings and cutlery and random household objects. We'd spend days searching for them, and then weeks later we'd find them in the freezer. Nobody knew how they got there, nobody admitted moving them, and it happened so often that eventually it became a running joke. Whenever something disappeared, we'd blame a ghost we named George. A fork missing? George. Something moved? George. George is at it again, we'd laugh. At least we did at first. One afternoon, my mom and her friend Lynn were sitting in the living room talking. The conversation had turned emotional. They were speaking about another close friend who had passed away, and about Lynn's baby boy, who had also sadly passed away. The room was quiet and filled with heavy emotions when my mom noticed that the room was freezing, and she said as much to her friend, "It feels cold in here." She stretched out her hand, and another hand appeared out of thin air. Disembodied, a singular hand, it reached out and held my mom's hand for only a moment, and then it was gone. After that, things calmed down for a little while, but when I was around 10 years old, my brother woke me up in the middle of the night. He told me to go downstairs. When I got there, my mom was sitting in the living room, and she looked shaken. I asked what was going on, and she simply said, "Nothing, we'll talk about it tomorrow." A little later, her boyfriend arrived. Nobody would explain anything to me, and eventually I just went back to bed. The next day, some of my mom's friends came over. At one point, my mom asked me to run upstairs and grab her cigarettes, and as I came back down the stairs, I overheard part of the conversation, and I wish I hadn't. My mom was telling them what had happened during the night. She said she'd been sleeping, when suddenly something woke her up. Someone was grabbing her face, and as it did, she heard a voice right beside her ear. "You bitch." Not long after that, my mom decided to bring a medium into the home. The medium immediately focused on my mom's bedroom. She performed prayers and then pointed to a mirror that my mom had received years earlier. The mirror, she said, was acting as a portal. She instructed my mom to cover it and move it immediately. The medium also claimed the spirit we'd nicknamed George wasn't dangerous at all. She believed that George was actually there trying to protect us. After all of that, during my teenage years, I would regularly experience sleep paralysis. And it always followed the same strange pattern. I'd wake up, unable to move, unable to scream, unable to even turn my head. Then I'd hear the voices. Multiple voices, people standing around me reciting the Lord's Prayer over and over and over again. I would squeeze my eyes shut, trying to force myself back to sleep. Then I'd wake up again, and the voices would still be there, still reciting, still surrounding me. Finally, when I was 17, I moved out of that house. I'm 35 now, and in all those years since leaving, it's never happened again, not once. My mom always believed that the reason for everything traces back to her playing with the Ouija board when she was a teenager. She doesn't think she properly closed the session. She's convinced that whatever answered her that one night never really left her. And after everything we've experienced, maybe she's right.
These footprints traveled over 100 miles in one night, and no one can fully explain what they are. 1855 was a very cold year for London, especially the night of February 8th to February 9th. They had a pretty heavy snowfall, and then the next morning, the residents of East Devon, I don't know how you say that, but they woke up and there were some very strange footprints in the snow. They estimated that these footprints traveled from anywhere from 40 to 100 miles, and they were all in a single file line just like this. It wasn't the typical footprints you'd see where it was kind of, you know what I mean? It was in a single file line. They looked like they were hoof marks, but they were around 4 inches long and 3 inches across, and between 18 and 16 inches apart, again in a single file line. Stranger still, these footprints weren't just on the road. They were all over the place, including high walls, snow-covered roofs, haystacks, rivers, like frozen rivers, and even inside really small drain pipes. First-hand accounts of this incident are extremely rare, and the first written account was found in 1950 after a collection of documents that was authored by Reverend H.T. Ellacombe, who was the vicar of St. George in the 1850s. He had wrote about this, and when he wrote about it, he wrote not for publication. He described the prints being like a donkey's hoof, but again, very clearly stating how they were in a single file line instead of going right, left. He also said that all of the footprints all over the 40 to 100 miles were exactly the same, indicating that it was the same creature. It didn't take long for people to start rumors about this, saying that the devil himself had left these footprints, so they were called the devil's footprints or tracks of Satan. This scared people so much that they stopped leaving their homes after midnight. There are a lot of different theories out there, mostly about them being like any kinds of different animals, like ponies or donkeys or even mice. And there is a whole nother theory that is out there. But a British novelist named Geoffrey Household says that he believed it was an experimental balloon. He believes that there was a balloon that was mistakenly released from Devonport Dockyard, and this balloon had shackles attached to the end of its rope. He believes that this balloon is what left the tracks in the yard, but it was all kept under wraps because this balloon had damaged several greenhouses and windows, and they didn't want anyone finding out about it. But to this day, no one really knows what left the marks. So what are your thoughts? Did the devil leave these marks, or was it a balloon, or is it all just a hoax? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and follow for more spooky things. How did 3 men disappear from an island? In December of 1900, 3 men were sent to Flannan Isles lighthouse off of the northwest coast of Scotland. James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and William MacArthur were the 3 men who were hired to stay at the lighthouse that had just been built a year earlier in 1899. The men most likely disappeared around December 15th of 1900, and this was around the time that a pretty massive storm came through the area. It was near the end of December when another ship came to the lighthouse to kind of check out what was going on or what was happening with the men. So on December 26th of 1900, they docked the ship, and then one man named Joseph Moore climbed the 160 steps up to the lighthouse to see what was going on. When he stepped inside the lighthouse, he found that the table was set for someone who was never going to come back, and there was a clock on the wall that was completely silent. The only thing that was alive in the White House was a canary that was sitting quietly in its cage. He was freaked out, so he ran back down to the boat to ask more people to come up and search with him. When they came back to the lighthouse, they found that there was an oilskin, which I believe is kind of like a raincoat back in the day. I could be wrong, but there was a raincoat still in the house. So when the men had left the house, they had left their rain protection there. And on the western side of this island, there was iron railings that had been bent in the wind. So this meant that the winds were so violent that they were able to bend the railings. But it wasn't just that. There was also a railway track that had been moved out of place, and a giant boulder had rolled from these winds. In that same area, there was a supply box that had been smashed on the ground, and all of the stuff in it was spread across the land. But still, there was no sign of the 3 men. The captain said in his report that there was nothing in the east that seemed out of place, but in the west, there was an old box halfway up the railing for holding Westland mooring ropes and tackle, and it had gone. They did decide that this was probably just an accident, that the men had gone out to fix something and been caught up in the storm and basically blown away. But others think that it might not have been that simple because the wind was pushing inward, so they wouldn't have gone over the cliffs and been pulled out to sea. They would have fell inward, if that makes sense. But as all things with mysteries, people started talking and rumors started spreading, and some rumors were that they were devoured by a sea monster. Other people thought that maybe one of the men had taken another one's lives and then, or had taken 2 of the men's lives and then thrown himself over the cliff. There's a lot of speculation as to what might have happened here. Personally, I think that they just got caught up in the storm and were probably drug out to sea, but what are your thoughts on this? Let me know down in the comments and follow for more.
Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
Have you ever heard of the Kelly Hopkinsville goblin encounter? The story starts on August 21st of 1955, and it was on a small family farm in Kelly, Kentucky, where 11 people were spending an evening playing cards, just spending time together. As the evening began to wind down, Billy Ray Taylor took a step outside, and that's when he saw something silver flash across the sky. He ran inside the house and told the family what he had seen, but they all thought it was probably just a meteor or a falling star or something like that. But another man named Elmer Sutton went outside to check it out with him. At first they didn't see anything until they turned around and the dog got scared and ran under the porch to hide. That's when they saw some beings coming from around the back of the house. They were little, like 3.5 foot tall beings. They had big glowing eyes and arms that went all the way down to the ground. So the 2 men were terrified and ran back into the house and locked the door, and everyone thought that they were losing their minds. They ran outside to try to defend themselves, and according to the story, the goblins or the beings, they never tried to fight the men, but the men were so terrified that they started taking aim at them, but they were not able to hit them. Then, while one of the men was standing on the porch, a clawed hand came from up above and tried to grab his hair, but the rest of the family pulled him back inside. So they run out there again and start aiming at these creatures again, and again, they're unable to hit them at all. So the family decides that they're going to Hopkinsonville and go to the police department. Now, the police did come and check things out, but they couldn't find out what had happened. Like, it was obvious that an incident had happened because there was shots everywhere, but they couldn't find any bodies from these aliens. And it was sometimes like these men would hit them, but they couldn't actually hit them, if that makes sense. So finally the police leave and the family comes back to the farm. They put the kids to bed, and even the grandma goes and lays down, and she's about to fall asleep when she opens her eyes and sees in the window the goblins again. Thinking it's all in her head, she goes back to sleep until she sees them a second and a third time, and that's when she tells the men, hey, they're back. These men defended their home until the morning came, and then the goblins disappeared and they were never seen again. So what are your thoughts? Was this a real UFO encounter, or is it all just a hoax? Was it all just mass psychosis? Like, what was going on that night? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and follow for more spooky things.
Yep, you are absolutely correct. 100%. It's literally like your comment covers everything that I wanted to say in my last video. Everything. Because like if you watch my last video, like in the beginning of the video of me talking, I said a whole lot more before TikTok decided you said too much, and they flagged the video every single time I posted it. It took me about like 2 or 3 hours to edit the video. I was so mad. And I'm like, no, I'm not gonna stop. I need to put that message out there, because again, that movie right there, even though a lot of people didn't get a chance to watch it, and that's what they do. These movies, actually, they don't go out and like they put a big trailer out there, commercials, commercials break and stuff. No, they always hidden. And then you, for some reason, you're bored and you're going through Netflix or any like entertainment platform that we use nowadays. And then you kind of jump into this like small little movie, like not really like interested in it. And there you go. These hidden messages are actually right there. And as soon as I started mentioning company names, and I'm not gonna do that again in that video, all these fast food names, all these companies, I know for sure it has to be human, this. I'm not gonna say the name again, so I can, next thing you know, they flag the video. I needed to respond to your comment because it is exactly that. Our food are not food anymore. They don't taste the same anymore. They don't smell the same anymore. They don't even look the same anymore. We're not stupid. Come on now. We have brains for a reason. As soon as that we see the meat that we actually buy from the supermarkets now, we can tell the difference. Literally, the way it looks, the way it's shaped, like the smell of it. Have you ever like taken recently, like taking like a steak out of the wraps in the plastic bottom, you take that out, the intense smell coming out of that, oh my god. And then in the beginning of the movie where you see like they actually like using some kind of zip up bag to actually put the person in there so it can stay fresh, so they can preserve the meat. As soon as I saw that part, the smell of like unpacking a meat from the supermarket, it just hits me right there. I just know it's just not real animal meat that we eating. So I hope this message serves everyone well. Literally. If you're a vegan, stay vegan. If you're not, go to your local farms. Like go local. That's your best bet. Literally, go local. That's the safest way of literally like just taking care of our bodies nowadays. And then what's crazy and what's very saddened is that like we don't really have a way around it, because we have to eat. Sometimes we're at work or you coming from work, and the best bet is to stop at a fast food restaurant. Grab something very quick, a burger or anything like that. And I'm not telling you guys to pull a cold turkey or anything. Like, no, just do it less. Do it less. You know, like your body, you have control over your body, over your mouth, and what you put inside of your body, not them. So do it less.
Am I wrong for refusing to help raise my husband's children after he clearly told me I am not their mother, but he wants me to clean, cook, take them to school, run and do everything? But yeah, he's telling me that he doesn't want me to be their mother because they've already got one. Story time. My husband has got 3 children with his ex-wife, and they have been having joint custody. They live in my house full time. You know, they moved into my house that I paid for. There's no mortgage, no rent. So they live there rent free. I pay for everything. Even the bills, I still pay for it because I just want to help. I take them to school, I cook for them, I clean, I do the washing, I help them with homework. But then my husband told me when we first got together that he is not looking for a mother figure for his children because they've already got their own mother and she's involved in their lives. And I said, okay, I love these children and I do not see them differently. I see them like my own, although I haven't got any children with my husband. Fast forward, his ex-wife got married and she started family with her husband, which I'm talking about having children. And then she said she doesn't want the joint custody. So she signed over the children full time to my husband. Now, he is telling me that he wants me to step up and do more for his children. As if I wasn't already doing more. I told him that his own words, he said he does not want a mother for his children because they've got a mother. So why should I do that? He said he needs some time to spend with his friends, to go out drinking and just him alone time because now he's got them full time and he thinks that it's just too much for him to be able to handle now. And he's not asking me to be a mother figure, but just to step up and do more for these children. I send them all packing out of my house. He said I never loved him or his children. I was just pretending because he's just asking me for something, a little favor. And I flipped it and made it seem like it's a big deal when it isn't a big deal. And he's not lying. He's saying that he's not looking for a mother figure for his children. He just wants me to step up and do as a mother figure will do, but not be a mother figure. So guys, do you think I overly reacted? At this point, I don't even care what anyone thinks about, but please drop your honest opinions in the comment section below. I would like to know what you would do if that was you in my shoe. And